There are many ways to fly high, and that was not one of them. That was the Hawks game that we just played at home, and we lost about a lot of points, and we didn't score a lot of points, but I don't want to come on here and be like, yeah, to pound the same sad, depressing drum of like, yeah, rebuild the team and we need to do this, we need to do that. I'm gonna just look at some positives before I try to get into the negatives. Russ had his best game. Russ had his best overall game, and it was unfortunately squandered slash ended prematurely by a really terrible ejection. So we had two players get ejected. Russ was one of them, but positive. He had one of his best games, if not his best game in a Wizards jersey. And the reason that he had one of his best games was because he was driving and attacking, which is something we hadn't seen, which may have been due obviously to his injury hindering him from being able to drive. But in this, he drove and actually found success. He did get blocked like once or twice, but the gravity of him driving and the threat of him driving is so much more potent than him attempting to shoot, although he actually did hit all of his threes. Crazy stat. Bradley Beal missed all of his threes. Rui hit one, and I believe Davis might have hit one. I think he missed one, as well as Garrison Matthews. Yes, that's right. Westbrook shot a better 3-point percentage than all of those guys, which, wow, didn't expect that. But yes, Russ having his best game, something to take away from that is if he continues to drive the way he does, I don't think his shooting is going to continue to be that potent from outside, but if he continues to drive, that gives us a lot more gravity when attacking the lane because all of these bodies are going to come flying at him, and he is a very good passer. Um, but but yeah, that was one of the positives. I guess the other positive, Bradley Beal continued his scoring streak, which unfortunately will continue to be. I want to say it's a good scoring streak, but unfortunately it's just coming in losses, and it'd be nice to get some dubs. What else was good about this game? Rui hit a three. It was cool. But beyond Russ really having his best game, unfortunately, it didn't really coalesce with Beal as well as the rest of the team, and there were a lot of miscues. Alex Lynn, really much more than I expected. I had a bad feeling coming off of him getting cut from a team like the Raptors, but he's actually been really serviceable. I don't know if he should be taking all these threes. Like, I'm not a huge fan of him taking these threes, but if he's going to be hitting at least one out of two, that's stretching the floor. He is a bigger body down low, and he's actually forced a lot of missed shots from the opposing teams. I think there was a stat that just recently came out about how our opposition points, like teams' points against us, actually shot up to seventh, which I believe is good. So he's actually been quite serviceable. That's nice. I really like that. I think that's cool. So hopefully that can continue as the season goes on. I think he's much more of a mobile body. If you watch when you're watching these games, something that I noticed that's a problem with Robin Lopez is that Robin Lopez, although he does give good effort and he can get stops at times, the problem is that he is too slow against these more athletic bigs due to his age probably and just due to his sort of slower nature. He kind of moves like a tree in slow motion, where Alex Lynn is a bit more mobile, and I think that's super helpful in terms of us being able to win games. And though our defense remains porous and abysmal at times, I think Alex Lynn can really help us when guards are penetrating because we just really need like a big man that can do that. And so far, Alex Lynn has been doing that. So he's more than just a body off of camp. Him and Bell both have been pretty not stellar signings, but for what we have asked them to do, they've been pretty good, and I've enjoyed seeing them so far. Now, when it comes to the negatives, I'm going to talk about the more obvious one first because I think that there's something to be said for it. I hate being a fan that complains about fouls, but the refs in this game, like some of these calls were not good. And give them a 0 out of 10. And some of these, and there's something to be said for fouls affecting momentum of a game. And I really just hate talking about fouling. But there's a few phantom fouls. Like Trae Young kind of would like embellish contact every now and again on like off of a screen, and it gets you to the point where you're like, okay, so what can I do as a defender? What can I do? I can't go under the screen because he'll just splash a three. But if I try to keep up with him on the screen, if I try to go over the screen, I'm going to get called for a foul. So what do I do? And when you are blocked off from any kind of option of guarding him, you're kind of forced to leave him open, even though with the Wizards defense, we go under screens too much anyway. But it is really frustrating. And then on top of that, when Beal pretty much, at one point, Beal went up and then he bounced off the floor. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, is he okay? Which actually helped me remember another positive. Beal was like going crazy. Like he was sacrificing his body, trying his damnedest, doing damn near hustling. Even if he wasn't scoring as much, he was hustling. I think he got a block on Collins. I don't remember. I think they call it a foul because essentially it was a thing of Wizards were not really getting many calls, and I think that affected their momentum because it led to frustration. It led to Robin Lopez getting ejected during Beal free throws. Trae Young ended up shooting technical free throws, and you have Russ getting ejected. And so I don't want to be like the fouls caused us to lose the game. I just think that when there are bad calls going against you and it seems like you can't really guard the opposition, then it really does affect the team. It makes the opposing team happy because they can just do whatever they want. But if you're the defender, you're like, okay, so what the hell can I do? And so I think in terms of that, there was a lot of frustration there. But that's not the main culprit. It just is one of the more obvious ones that you could see. Our offense still lacks some creativity. Russ being able to drive definitely does give us some more options if this is what he's going to continue to be. Like I said, I don't know if the shooting is going to continue, but if he's going to continue to be able to drive like this, it'll be great. Our offense is just, there's a lot of the times we'll see a dribble handoff. Our bigs can't pass out of the post. Not a single one of them can. I know Denny Advia can definitely do that, so when he comes back, that'll be great. Because tonight's game, because I keep forgetting sometimes when I start these. Tonight's game, we got Mo Wagner back, we got Rui back, we got Denny back. But honestly, it wasn't really good game from any of them. Wagner didn't even really play until this game was pretty much out of hand. So there's not really much you can do to evaluate there. It was just, the calls started piling up and we were also just not defending. When it comes to our offense, it seems like if it's not Beal on the floor, they kind of don't run much or they don't run anything at all. There's a lot of times where it ends in a Garrison Matthews sort of pull up, and he can be dangerous as a shooter, but I feel like if we had him running off of like any kind of screens rather than these sort of dribble handoffs, it would really do wonders in opening up our offense a bit more. If we're gonna have Beal on the floor, instead of spamming dribble handoffs and ISOs, maybe have Beal be the decoy, so that way you don't have, or you use the team that is sort of zoning in on Beal, you use that against that team. You say, if you're gonna double team him, then I'm gonna use these other weapons at my disposal. Of course, those weapons have to be hitting, and one of those other weapons, Bertans, was not able to do much. If he's not shooting well, it's kind of pretty much a sunk cost with him, and hopefully he can get into a rhythm like we've been saying and like the Wizards have been dealing with. The COVID protocols are not really assisting in this team being able to build any kind of consistent rhythm, but before that, there wasn't really much cohesion in the first place. There still is something to be said for not playing that well, and Bertans hasn't really been doing that well overall. the entire season. So yeah, he's kind of just a minus on defense right now. Like I feel like when there's a lot of moments, like if he's not hitting threes, it's just there's not really many contributions from him. And I feel like that's not the same thing that can be said for last season. I feel like he was doing a little bit more. But Rui, it was an unfortunate, like, he's trying to create, and you can see him sort of awkwardly dribble. He'll awkwardly dribble, and then he'll pass it off, and then the ball will come back to him, and he'll kind of just try to take a mid-range. He hit a 3. He was 3 of 9 from the floor, and for the most part, I think, again, it's the same thing with our offense being so bland that we're very predictable. When Beal's on the floor, everyone knows where the ball is going. It's not like the fourth quarter where when you're playing against a team, you're like, okay, you know the ball's going to go to such and such. At the very least, even if you know that, there are creative ways to make it so even if the other team knows that, it's hard to stop it. And it's not always dependent on just a player being so good that they can overcome it. Sometimes you put a player in a better position. And a lot of the times, our offense, again, these dribble handoffs, these there's not much screening going on. There's not a lot of movement. And a lot of the times, the other team can just either like pack the paint against us. Because another little quirk I noticed is when we do run sort of a pick and roll, our guy will, like, the big will go to the basket even if the guard drives, and so that brings another defender over, and so now you're passing out of the shot, and we don't really have that many creative playmakers other than, Denny, but if only Brooks would actually run him and let him run some playmaking out of the post so we don't have our bigs turning the ball over if they can't, make something happen. A lot of the times it feels like our offense is very just freewheeling, and just as a half-court offense, we are not good. We don't have a creative playmaker in those bench units that can use misdirection. Instead, a lot of the times we're usually attacking in transition, and I think that our half-court offense just it's really lackluster beyond Beal and Russ. And another thing with Russ too, before I forget, towards the end of the third, we really started to run these cool high screen actions for him, where the big would sort of bring it, like pass the ball into Russ, and as he brings the ball up the court, someone else would be setting a screen on Russ's guy, and Russ could just keep going downhill. And so it made it hard for the team to stop that momentum, because Russ going downhill fully healthy, he's pretty scary, especially when he's scoring inside. So yeah, offense still bland, but there's some sparks of life. If Davis can have some kind of a shot, and if Rui can be put in maybe better, like we were running mismatches for him against the Nets. I wish we would find ways to go back to that, but again, our offense is kind of pass, but no one pass, dribble, contested mid-range, pull up, 3. That's pretty much our offense for the most part. Beyond that, our defense remains porous, and I hate to constantly say that, but it's literally like the whole thing. And I think a lot of it comes down to bad communication. There was too many moments where we keep going under the screen, or we switch at a bad time. And two of the very particular moments, we let them get a buzzer beater 3. Now the first one was Rondo, and Rondo's 3-point shot has always kind of been up and down. And it seems like he can only shoot in the playoffs, so, everyone kind of reputation-wise looks at Rondo and says, okay, he's only going to try in the playoffs. But he was here, and he was managing to piss off the entire Wizards squad and causing havoc. We let Rondo get one off, and then we let Hunter get one off. And there was 4 seconds. We had 4 seconds at the end of the second, 4 seconds before the quarter. All we had to do was just get one stop after Russ scored, and we couldn't even do that. And I think that just comes down to a lack of communication. There's not anything I can say the Wizards take away from teams, or at least it feels like it when watching this. It feels like every time somehow some 3-point shooter gets open. On top of that, it seems like we're not really good at securing a stop. A lot of times when the ball seems to just not be able to stay in anyone's hands, or we have a guard trying to rebound over a big, and that's a bad look. It feels like we don't really stop offensive rebounders. If a team has a big that can gobble boards, we're pretty much just screwed. Like I said, along with Beal going cold, this game was pretty much set game and match alongside the bad ticky-tack foul calling. So, yeah, our half-court offense needs a lot of work. It needs to have some type of variety. I think if you screen these guards or find a way to get Rui a way to attack mismatches, because he had some good dunks when he did get wide open, but beyond that, he hit 1 3 and that was it. Like, he and Davis were pretty much invisible, and they are just returning. I do want to acknowledge that, but there's something to be said for the lack of creativity in the offense, the lack of communication on defense. So, like, at the end of the day, bad calls aside, we didn't really play that well to really deserve a win. And so, unfortunately, we lost. Against the Hawks, they have a lot of good shooters and defenders. And when you have a dangerous creator like Trae Young who can attack from three and attack and penetrate, and our defense gives up everything, we're going to lose that game. I think the Hawks game was a winnable game. I don't think this Nets game is a winnable game. We're already just yikes defensively, but the Nets, maybe the Nets just sleepwalk this game, and maybe they just, don't even take us seriously, and we somehow win. Maybe this time instead of Kyrie and KD missing, maybe Kyrie, KD, and James Harden all miss clutch shots, and we still win somehow. That would be cool. Is it gonna happen? Well, this guy says Nets can be scorched, but the Wizards have yet to do that consistently. So if they do that one day, if they start scorching Nets with no regard for human life, that could either be called arson or a dub. We'll see.